From Chesapeake, Virginia, the Lighthouse 100.1 presents Sports Scene. Sports Scene features local, regional, and nationally acclaimed guests and excellent interviews. Follow Sports Scene on Twitter at Greg Bick. Now here is Greg Bicouvaris.
Sports Scene presented by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. Greg Bicouvaris along with Colleen. Thank you for joining us. Sports Scene Saturday on the radio and WPMH and TuneIn.com by typing WPMH in the search bar. Tell your friends about Sports Scene. Twitter at Greg Bick. And you can see the rest of my Twitter handles on gjbtv.com in the contact section. Thank you to our military. Guest lineup presented by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. Browse, shop, visit. Sports highlights on nnpstv.com since February of 92. Phone line presented by @Greg Bick on YouTube, GREGBIC. Subscribe. GJBTV.com. Sports Scene is a presentation of GJBTV.com and WPMH. Basketball, baseball, the NFL schedule, and the NFL draft are all on the horizon. Great interviews, excellent guests, business segments, highlights, commentary, what tees me off. Thank you for listening to Sports Scene. We love our regulars and tourists who listen online and on the radio. Stay tuned.
Aberdeen Barn Steakhouse, your destination for prime rib in Hampton Roads since 1966. Aberdeen Barn in Virginia Beach is the preferred place for banquets, parties, meetings, and special occasions, showcasing 9 banquet rooms. Treat your family, friends, and coworkers to delicious steaks and fresh seafood at the Aberdeen Barn in Virginia Beach. Like the Aberdeen Barn on Facebook. For more, log on to aberdeenbarn.net and visit them daily at 5805 Northampton Boulevard in Virginia Beach.
Catch up on archived editions of Sports Scene by going to gjbtv.com and clicking the YouTube image on the homepage. Now back to Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris.
And welcome back to Sports Scene. Always a pleasure to have Scott Jackson on from the DMV. Went to Old Dominion, broadcaster as well. You've heard him on the Washington Commanders postgame show. How are you, Scott?
Good. How you doing today, Greg?
Very good, my friend. Well, let's get right to it. It's been a few months now. What's the whole feel for the name change? To me, down here where you went to college, it still really hasn't stuck or resonated, but I guess it is what it is.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to put it. It is what it is. It's still awkward to say. It was really chunky to say Washington football team, but, actually I kind of got used to it after a while, and yeah, Commanders, and you know how people are. They like to shorten things, like 49ers or Niners, the Packers the Pack. But yeah, this is a weird one. Like, how do you shorten it? Anders, some people joke around to the commies, some other stuff. But yeah, I don't think it hasn't resonated. And I haven't, to be honest with you, I don't see a ton of Commanders gear out in the community right now. So that's another thing, which I'd be curious to see when these numbers come out as to what's selling and what have you, how it's done. You would think because it's new, it would do very well, but, again, it's unscientific polling of just walking around and driving around in the Loudoun County area where the team headquarters are. I've not seen a whole lot of Commanders gear out there.
And that's a great point. Merchandise is big, and if merchandise doesn't sell, is that something they put back on the table?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, it's here to stay. They made the decision. I don't know. I mean, it's just, they got to, like anything else with these uniforms, they always tweak them anyway. I'm just not sure, what the numbers are. Like I said, maybe when the season starts, we get close to the season, we'll see some of this stuff pop. But I can't imagine like Carson Wentz 11 jerseys are flying off the shelves or flying off NFL.com at this point.
Mm-hmm. Scott, let me ask you that. Heineke, of course, who went to Old Dominion, was the quarterback last year, for the most of the year. And your thoughts on that? Is that a big upgrade? I mean, this guy, Wentz, of course, went to the Colts because he had a affiliation there with Reich. It didn't work out. He didn't close the deal, did not get to the postseason. He had a pretty good year stats-wise, but he's been injury-prone his entire career.
What blew me away was he actually played all 17 games last year, and it felt like every week there was some dynamic, there was some story about him maybe not playing. The fact that he suited up for 17 actually shocked me. I remember he had the foot injury late in the preseason. I think he was visiting with Dr. Anderson, and they thought, maybe he needs surgery, maybe not. He ended up playing through all that all year, and I just wonder about how that impacted his season. Even though he was on the field, maybe he wasn't, fully healthy the whole time. They did not have good receivers outside of Pittman. When their second leading receiver, Zach Pascal, that's not good enough. And I like Zach, but he's more of a special teams guy, maybe your fourth or fifth receiver, not your second receiver. Mo Alley Cox, who played ball at VCU as a basketball player and played football since high school, is one of the better receivers too. And obviously, Jonathan Taylor's terrific at running back. Never really had T.Y. Hilton on the field last year to full strength. So I think you look at a lot of the things last year and you say, 27 TDs, 7 picks, not terrible. Obviously, the end of the season's bad. When your owner makes what seemed like a movie scene kind of proclamation, as he did late in January on a tarmac with the plane engines running behind him, and saying this was unacceptable and all the things he said, the big fire and brimstone speech, and he was going to change it. You knew somebody's head was going to roll, and it was Carson Wentz. So, and the more you dig into this, it's fascinating that the players in Indianapolis, unlike Philadelphia, had a lot of good things to say about him as a teammate and as a leader. Even Frank Reich, was not completely convinced this was the thing to do, but he obviously went along with it because his boss wanted to. It's him or Carson, I guess, at that point. So, or both of them. So I guess you got to just roll with it if you're the head coach at that. So I was interested to see that. And look, none of it matters, frankly, until he comes here and plays, and we see what he looks like and what they're able to put around him in terms of weapons and how he fits in with this group and if they're better. But in terms of talent, yeah, it's a big leap, no question. It's a big leap.
Absolutely. Talking to Scott Jackson. Scott, you want to give us your Twitter handle?
Yeah, Jackson Sports. You can follow me there.
Very good, very good. Greg Bicouvaris, glad you're with us for a sports scene right here. And you talk about the one thing about Wentz, at least he's familiar with the NFC East, having quarterback the Eagles.
Yeah, there is that. I don't think he's really as excited to go back to Philadelphia as he kind of smiled and said he was at the press conference, but he'll have to do that at some point. I imagine he'll stick that in prime time, and make a big production about it. It'll be interesting. He's going to get food pretty big time. He knows the division, which is good. At the same time, I think the bigger thing for Washington is here's a guy who's got a strong arm. Here's a guy, that opens up a lot of things in the playbook that Taylor Heineke did not. I never really saw what Ryan Fitzpatrick was here because he was obviously gone by halftime of the first game. So we don't really know. Alex Smith was never an aggressive downfield passer here. He was very much, check down Alex a lot of times, which was his rep. But, Alex also didn't turn the ball over. And the amazing thing about Carson is even though he gets accused of maybe, why his completion percentage has never been great is he does press the ball downfield, maybe to his own detriment at times. But the interception numbers have never really been out of control for him. So hopefully that's something that continues. And maybe, Scott Turner can also work, you get into his head, hey, it's okay to take the check down. From time to time, especially with some of the guys you have here, including J.D. McKissick, who came back, and hopefully Logan Thomas once he's back on the field at that tight end position.
Very good, exactly. And one thing about Washington in the fall, they're going to have to get off to a lot better start. They can't dig themselves in a hole. The bottom line is, with the playoff game a year and a half ago or so, they've been 7-10 the last 2 years. So 14-20, and Ron always talks about year 3, but that's year 3 when he had Cam Newton. This year 3 is with Carson Wentz and Heineke. So who knows what's going to happen, but it'll still be a lot to be determined as the fall evolves. So it'll be interesting. They got rid of Collins. There's always going to be attrition, Scott, so it's no year is a comparison to the other year.
Yeah, and it's funny, Atlanta Collins had been released last year at this time, nobody would have cared. Really, nobody would have cared.
Yeah.
Because he actually finally found a role that was pretty good for him in this offense, or this defense, rather, right before the bye week when they really sold him on, hey, you're a Buffalo nickel, which is like a hybrid linebacker safety, and he bought in and he was good, and he wasn't good prior to that. So yeah. It is kind of weird how we look at things because, like I said, if it happened before last year, nobody would have batted an eye, but now it's like, oh no, how could you get rid of Landon Collins? And obviously they need to free up some money and. We'll see how they kind of fill that spot, and I think to this point, I haven't heard a whole lot about a Landon Collins market. I would imagine he'll land somewhere, though.
Talking to Scott Jackson, don't forget our good friends at CP Shuckers, Locals Tradition on Shore Drive, Pacific Avenue. Go by and see Matt, Mark, Chef, and Leon for great food, great appetizers, steak bites. Watch all of the rest of March Madness, the NBA playoffs, the NHL, and, of course, baseball right there on the big screens and on the TVs. Excellent food at 2 Virginia Beach locations. CP Shuckers, like them on on Facebook. Yeah, I actually thought Collins played pretty good as the year evolved, and Washington had some good times there toward the end, but just not enough consistency. And I think that's the big thing with Rivera. There hasn't been enough consistency. That 20 year was a COVID year. He was sick. He was tired. He was taking breaks, as you know, on the bench. He seemed a lot better health-wise last year in 2021. But I think that's the one thing teams are going to be looking for Washington. How consistent are they?
Yeah, and it really starts the quarterback. I mean, they started, 4 quarterbacks his first year, 4 quarterbacks the second year. That's no way to win. I mean, you don't win in the NFL with a revolving door at that spot. So that's the biggest thing. That's where it starts and stops, and that's what they have to have. And it's also year 3 for Jack Del Rio with that defense. I mean, they had a horrendous start last year. They were the biggest disappointment by far. A lot of expectations there. You had the Chase Young injury in the middle of this, right after the bye week against Tampa. He was not playing well. Montez Sweat never really had a good start to the season either, and then he got injured. Then he had COVID, and then, of course, his brother died. I mean, just this awful chain of events. His brother's murder, I should say, in Richmond, and it's just an awful chain of events for him. So, we hope to think those guys will be back and raring to go when the season starts. And, and that will prove to make them a better team. But, again, until we see them out in the field, this is all just, hey, it's off-season chatter and hope right now for this franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. Just trying to get back to their winning ways and get back to the postseason. But it'll be interesting. A lot of teams around the league have made quarterback changes. Brady's coming back. No surprise there to Tampa Bay. That retirement lasted all but 40-plus days, at the most. And, of course, you saw where Mayfield has left the Browns. And, of course, changes with the Browns quarterback and Watson going there. So there's always going to be attrition. What are the biggest needs for Washington during the draft?
Well, I still think they could use, a linebacker, help a linebacker if they don't get it in the draft. I think in the free agency, they could go towards that in the draft. I think they still could use help in the secondary, whether that be a corner or an impact safety. I mean, I think either one of those is in play at 11. Assuming they stay there and don't move back, I think they need some help at the guard position. Probably need some defensive tackle depth now that they've cut Ioannidis, and obviously Tim Settle has gone to the Buffalo Bills. So I think that's an area. I still think they need another tight end. I mean, Logan's injury happened later in the season. ACL, MCL, we'll see, where he's at. I haven't really heard a full update yet on if they expect him to start the year, and that was a position that didn't have a ton of depth anyway. John Bates did some decent things as a rookie. Was a pretty good blocker, pretty good catching the ball as well. Samus Reyes, really never saw him do anything outside of play special teams. She was pretty good at, mind you, but still they need another person there. So I think those are the things. I'm not big on them drafting a receiver like a lot of folks are. I think if they can get DeAndre Carter back and he's your returner, I think obviously you assume that Curtis Samuel will be healthy this year. You have to believe that you invested in him. And, hopefully De'Ami Brown, year 2 will be better than year 1. They kept Cam Sims. Obviously McLaurin's your number 1 guy. So I think they have enough people at that position, and, they'll be okay. And I just think the other needs are much more pressing as far as the draft is concerned.
I'm going back to a few years ago when he was here, but Jamison Crowder, to me, always had a lot of great potential, was a pretty good player. He has done fairly well with the Jets when he got traded. It seems like sometimes they were quick to release players just to get rid of players, too.
Yeah, Jamison's problem is he doesn't stay on the field enough. And, the other problem for Jamison, this was not his fault, was that they should have taken Stephon Diggs, but they didn't.
Yeah.
They skipped Stephon Diggs twice. It was in their backyard as a college player and as a high school player, and he was the stud at that draft at the position. And they overthought it. They totally overthought it, and it hurt. This is Scott McLuhan, who they were selling T-shirts for here at one point. I mean, just the more you go back into the autopsy on his time here, it's just like, wow, some of the decisions just really are still hurting them. I mean, quite frankly, it's just still bites in a lot of ways. And, we still sold in Matt Jones as a running back, Beast Mode Part 2, and he was a disaster, couldn't hold on to the football. And, the Josh Jackson pick, just so many crappy picks from him. And in such a short period of time, and then it ended so badly. And then the funny thing was, it was fun as, hey, Bruce Allen, here he goes again. And, find a scapegoats and, whatever. But the guy wasn't all that good. That was the other problem. He did well with some of the lower level pickups, but really didn't build up the way he talked about building things up here. So that was frustrating. Then you had kind of, the rudderless ship after that until they ran out Jay and Bruce. And, They actually had some good drafts in between, which helped, for Ron when he first got here. But there's still a lot of areas, and especially obviously the number one position, quarterback, they're still trying to make up for.
Yeah, it's almost like chess, checkers, Monopoly, what's happened the last several decades with Washington, pretty much since 1999. But we'll come back with Scott with the second segment. We'll talk some hoops here, college hoops, and a little bit of NBA. Stay tuned for more of Sports Scene.
Interact with Sports Scene on Twitter at Greg Bick. Email bicogb@hotmail.com. Now back to Greg Bicouvaris in the Hampton Roads OnlineMall.com studios.
Welcome back to Sports Scene right here on WPMH every Saturday morning from 10 to 11, 100.1 FM, 96.9 FM, 1270 AM, tunein.com by typing WPMH in the search bar, and of course archived all over social media. Scott, of course, hoops right now, March Madness. One thing we'll talk about before we talk about the rest of the teams, Maryland and Georgetown, big changes. Georgetown did not make a coaching change, but that was the worst debacle I've seen of that Big East team in my lifetime.
Yeah, I stopped watching about mid-year just for my own health. It's terrible. I mean, they're in a bad spot. I'm one of the few people I think that said this at the time, and I still believe it. Should have never fired John Thompson III. A couple bad years, but he had a lot of good years before that. Maybe the worst thing that ever happened to him was going to the Final Four early in his tenure, because everybody thought that was going to happen every single season. He got players there. They had people complained and whined about the Princeton system, but at least you knew what they were about. I really don't understand. It's hard to kind of figure out what Patrick Ewing's trying to do right now. And, the problem is they've gotten players. They just can't keep them. The retention's been terrible in that regard. And I don't know. I don't know how they fix it. I don't know. I really don't have any answers for you. I wish I could tell you what they needed to do. I was surprised they gave him one more year. I think if he's not obviously Patrick Ewing, that never happens. Legendary, Hoya. And this is a tough thing about hiring guys that are legends. I mean, they did this at St. John's with Chris Mullen, because eventually you're going to have to fire them if they're not good coaches. And it's not pretty. I hope for a miracle for them next season, but I wouldn't be real optimistic about it if I was a Georgetown fan.
Absolutely, of course, and just because you had all the shine when you were a player does not mean it's going to evolve as a coach. It just doesn't always work out that way, especially going to your alma mater, like Scott said. And then you talk about Maryland, of course. They got rid of Turge early in the year. Danny Manning, he couldn't win at Wake Forest, so I didn't expect him to win at Maryland as the interim coach. And, of course, they got a brand-new coach. The one thing, though, about Maryland, I had a guest on our last show who's from the Baltimore area saying, the one thing about Maryland is ever since they went to the Big Ten, Scott, they haven't been relevant in football. They always start off a couple wins against non-conference teams, and basketball has just been blah, so-so to just to say a few.
They've been terrible. I mean, it was I thought kind of a vindictive move for money. They were mad at the ACC. They've always felt like the redheaded stepchild of that conference. But that was also what kind of fueled them. They were important for the conference. I think it was good to have them. That for a long time I was the furthest north team prior to the Boston College edition, which has been so irrelevant. It's not even funny. But yeah, I mean, they've never been good at football in the league. They get all that money for the Big Ten Network. Doesn't seem like it helps them. I mean, it's always going to be more important to Michigan and Ohio State and, Penn State and those schools, Iowa even. And they're always going to be behind them. So, I mean, where do you ever fit in that scenario? And obviously Purdue's ahead. I mean, the list goes on. The teams are ahead of you. It's tough. I mean, and I think, they've recruited well. They've always put players in the league. They probably never had it better than they did when Ralph, Friedgen was there. Should have never, run Ralph out the way they did. That was terrible and clashing from Debbie Yow's part. It was one of the worst things they did. And the next worst decision was obviously moving to the Big Ten of basketball, or for all sports, excuse me. And, I mean, they're not as important. I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. Like, look, Kevin Willard's just fine hire, I should say. But if they were an ACC school still, that would have been a much more attractive job, but they're not. The Big Ten puts 9 tournament teams in, and they have 2 teams still playing. They haven't won a championship in over 20 years. It's Izzo's team 22 years ago now. It's the last national title team. And, they always say, well, it's not a fair way to assess them, how they do in the tournament. What the hell is a fair way to assess them then? Just because they cannibalize one another in the regular season and pump each other's their net ratings up now, and get a lot of teams in because they have a lot of powerful, administrators, doesn't mean it makes it a great, great basketball conference. I think there's some good players in it, but much like football, it doesn't feel like they're as athletic or as explosive or as interesting, quite frankly, as the other conferences. So, It's just where they are. I think Willard, again, best hire they could have had. I had kind of understand why Turgeon quit when he did. He just had enough of the fan base and the negativity and just always the complaining and, we're so much better than we are, and they're not. And, they announced yesterday, by the way, they're just getting a basketball facility. Oh, congratulations. You know who else has basketball facilities in much smaller conferences? Old Dominion, also VCU, just to name two that I'm close with. I mean, it's ridiculous. All that Under Armour money went to football, and everything, and it didn't go to basketball. And that's the other thing that hurts. Under Armour does not – kids don't wear Under Armour basketball shoes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sorry. Steph Curry's great, but, mom and dad may like the Under Armour outerwear and, wear them with their Skechers and their New Balance, but they're not wearing the sneakers, buying the sneakers either. The kids – these young basketball tournaments, Under Armour is not a strong presence, and they know that, and they're trying to fix it, but it doesn't help Maryland, and it doesn't help Under Armour schools. I don't know if it helps Old Dominion,
Yeah.
I know they'll say, the shoes are fine, the shoes are great. But the kids don't seem to wear them. Adidas and Nike, or Nike and Adidas in the correct order, are what kids wear and care about. So maybe with NIL, this offsets it, right? Maybe with that, if you have a good NIL program at your college that brings in money for kids, it won't matter. But Nike's still a huge brand. Adidas, makes their inroads as well. But I really think the Under Armour affiliation for Maryland has not been good for basketball. I don't think it's been, in the Big Ten, it's certainly not been good for basketball. So, I just think they are who they are. I think Willard, if he gets them in the tournament consistently, maybe he can sneak into the Sweet 16. Maybe you get a year where you have a run or two. Maybe if they bring Tony Skinn in, as they're saying they're going to do, I think that'll help recruiting. They haven't recruited the D.C. area very well, which has been a problem. So hopefully they can get their act together there.
Talking to Scott Jackson, and you said it right there with the Under Armour. I'm a big fan of classic uniforms. Remember, I interviewed Jay Paterno a while back. He says when you turn the TV on, Alabama's playing Notre Dame, Ohio State, Penn State. Maryland, they wear these different. They had great uniforms under Bobby Ross and Fridge. They did. Some of these teams want to wear alternate uniforms or classic uniforms. Even Washington wants to wear these black uniforms. I'm sorry, they're maroon, gold, white, red, gold, and white, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's the uniforms. To be honest, I think the kids kind of get into that, changing uniforms. I think, obviously, Oregon made that a big deal, and the helmets and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I just think it's for basketball players, the shoe is so important, and the branding, and I just don't, and I do high school basketball. I'm not just saying this is some old man sitting on the couch.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to get out and go and do high school basketball this year, do some big tournaments, and, I just look on the floor. I see Nike everywhere. I see Adidas. I don't see Under Armour. I see Under Armour, maybe on the sidelines with some of the parents, wearing the Under Armour, outerwear, which I do. It's great. It's great. It keeps, it's great for snowy weather too. But, in terms of being my basketball sneaker, I don't know if I'd wear it either, if I was a hooper. So I just think that's the bigger problem, and again, if you have NIL deals and all this other stuff for the kids set up when you're coming to college, maybe it doesn't matter, right? Maybe it doesn't matter, but a lot of times if this is what they played at AAU level and so on and so forth, they want to, Nike school's more attractive to them, and Adidas, to some degree for others as well.
Yeah, it seemed like Oregon started this whole mess, and now every school wants to do it.
No doubt.
But anyway, Outback Steakhouse in Virginia Beach, 1255 Fordham Drive. Go by and see Mike and the friendly staff. Give them a call at 523-4832. Open 7 days a week for lunch and dinner. Great bar area. Great for special occasions like Easter, Mother's Day coming up as well. Excellent burgers, steaks, seafood, salads, appetizers, desserts. Right there at Outback Steakhouse in Kempsville. Moving on from college to the NBA, the Wizards, they always start off, it seems like, steady or strong. But I'm sorry, I'm not sold on Unseld. This is kind of like Thompson, putting his son there. Then also, the Georgetown tree doesn't stop with Ewing. He's not getting it done. I'm sorry, Unseld to me has no presence, has no conviction. You won't even know he's the coach out there. He just doesn't do anything for me. Am I too strong?
Look, they got off to a really good start, which never happens. Like Tony Kornheiser, the joke, the annual 9-20 night. Yeah. They actually had a fast start this year. Then they had a bout of COVID. Bradley Beal and Spencer Dinwiddie never coexisted well on the court. Apparently Montrezl Harrell, who put up numbers, was a complete pain in the ass in the locker room and wore on guys. And it was a bad mix. It was weird how quickly it flipped. And look, the NBA is a players' league. I would disagree with you on Unseld. I don't know enough about what Wes Unseld can or can't do because he hasn't had a real lineup yet. And, some of that, too, was they were playing too many guys for a stretch, and I think part of that was they had a show Berton could still actually make a bucket. In and out, so you had to let Montrezl Harrell get his touches so they could trade him. So they were doing a lot of stuff. There's, too many things going on there, right? Were they really about winning, or were they really about we got to clear this roster out and, get it straight so we can have something of value here for Bradley Beal. I think the bigger problem for the Wizards is way off the court. It starts at the very top with ownership, and that's where it's always been. It was the same with the Bullets when Abe Pullum was there. When he was running things, like it was like your local small business and not like a big corporation. And I think now with Ted Leonsis, even though he's got some big ideas, they got the fancy sports book in there. It's just like you can't have it both ways. You can't sit here and tell me you're about championships and winning and doing all the right things, and then, scrambling for the 10 spot, the last couple of years, to get into the play-in series. And, the fact that they've treated Bradley Beal like he's like LeBron James in his prime and really worried about what he thinks about the team, and we're going to give you the max deal no matter what. I mean, it's more important to them to have a legacy player than it is for the betterment of the actual roster. And that they're not going to win anything with just throwing all this money at Bradley Beal, and Porzingis is there under this deal for the next couple seasons. That's not a championship team. I don't even know how high they can go, frankly, because we haven't even seen them play together yet. And that's the bigger issue. They don't have the idea how to get there. They made a nice trade getting Westbrook out of here, getting some value, and then that's fine. They got Wall out when they needed to. That's fine. They put out fires, and this is what they used to rip Ernie Grunfeld for. He's putting out fires. He started, but what's the common denominator factor here? I mean, it's the same ownership, right?
Right.
You thought it was important to draft Otto Porter when others were like, no, I don't think so. But that was important to the owner. It's important to the owner that he has a player he can say finish his career here. Start and finish it, Bradley Beal. That's more important than anything else. And it shouldn't be. It should be about what are we going to do to get better? This guy had a lot of value 2 seasons ago or a year and a half ago. Now I don't think he has nearly the value he used to. Mm-hmm. And they're treating him like he's one of the top 10 players in the league. He's not even third team All NBA anymore. I mean, I don't know if he's in your top 20 anymore, frankly. So it's a weird thing, and he's obviously been out for a while. Porzingis, at least he's shown some health and some ability since he's been here. But again, still they play together. Kuzma's been good, but how will he play when Beal's back taking a bunch of shots? And how will Porzingis handle that? I mean, so there's a whole chemistry thing we don't even have the answers to yet. And then I think at that point I can sit here and say, yeah, Wes Unseld sucks or he's great, but until I get to that moment, I really can't, because there's been too many things being served here throughout the season. They've been kind of riding the fence on, do we want to be in it? Do we not want to be in it? We got to do things for the future, but we also got to keep Brad interested and make Brad feel valuable. But it's not hard for Brad. It's like, here's the most money you'll ever make in your life. Get your taxes guy in here, and he'll tell you, you have to take that deal. Of course you do. You're not going to go to any other franchise that's going to give you that money or even care what you think about the roster. So you go somewhere else, you're like the third guy. So of course he's going to be, all in on the Wizards. But I don't know that the Wizards should be all in on him, but they are, and that's the way they're going to dictate their business.
Yeah,
until it fails or he retires. So be it. There's nothing you can do about it, but it's bizarre. I just the fascination with it is strange to me.
And another losing season. They're 30-41 as we speak. I'm not going to disagree with you about it's a players' league. It's like the college, it's a coaches' league. The NBA, it's a players' league. But there are strong personalities like Popovich, Spoelstra, Kerr, and Rivers who are.
How's Popovich doing without the players? By the way,
I know.
He sucks. I mean, Popovich, one of the greatest moves in the history of sports, is so underrated. Fires Bob Hill the season David Robinson gets hurt.
Yeah.
And they were a 50-win team before that. I mean, of course, I like Pop, and I think he is a good coach, but it's kind of like, dude, talk about the opportunity of a lifetime. Then move this guy out of the way, and I'm going to cuddle up to Tim Duncan. If they don't get that first pick that year, Greg Popovich, we're not even talking about him. We don't even know who the hell he is. He's probably out of the league by now.
But overall, he's been a great coach. But, Rivers, Kerr,
but again, without Tim Duncan, look at his record. And then whatever happened with him and Kawhi Leonard, I'll wait for the book. But, he lost Kawhi. I don't know how that happened, but he lost that battle. And that was his ticket to being, the guy that kept it going. You want to talk about a great coach, you talk about the guy in Miami.
No, Spoelstra.
Eric Spoelstra's a great coach. And I used to sit next to Eric Spoelstra when he was an advanced scout. That guy's a hell of a coach. He's a grinder, man. I'm all Eric Spoelstra. he's the best coach in the league right now. You know, you can talk about all these other guys who have these fancy players, but Spoelstra gets more out of less than any of them.
Yeah, he's done it without Bosch, Wade or LeBron, still gets it done. And let me say this, too. I'm not totally knocking Unseld, although I'm not an Unseld guy. Nobody's going to sell me on Unseld. I'm not sold on him, period, whether it's this year or next year, unless he turns it around. But what about going after a guy like Patino in the past? I mean, he was sitting there in Europe, for God's sake. He's Iona, winning there for the most part, a very small school. He did something with the Celtics and the Knicks a long time ago, but he's something that the Wizards would have been a jump start to their personality, to their image, to their branding, because it's been kind of like just mediocre for a long, long time.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that would have been the answer. He was a disaster in the NBA in Boston. No, I don't see that at all. I don't think he wants to do that either. But no. I mean, they weren't going to go. They went for the big swing coach, $7 million a year coach, so they were going to go. They were going to do the opposite this time.
Mm-hmm.
And they were preaching, defense, what have you. They were going to do that. I mean, I think there was a moment where, in time, where John Calipari would have made sense for them when Wall was still here, when he was still healthy in here, I should say. But that moment had long passed. But yeah, I don't. There's not a coaching solution to fix the Wizards. It's a front office and ownership thing. That's the bottom line. I mean, you can say, well, he got it done with the Caps. Well, did he, or did Alex Ovechkin get it done with the Caps? Right? I mean,
sure.
You could also argue they underachieved with the Caps because Alex Ovechkin, as great as he is, probably going to go down as the all-time leading goal scorer if he stays healthy here in the next 2.5 to 3 years. They won one, right? That just one. I mean, because that doesn't look like they got any chance to win one again with the way that things are constructed right now. So, it's just a little frustrating. They got a lot of other interests, like the casino, or the sportsbook, in the building, the team liquid and all this other stuff that just doesn't resonate with NBA fans or NHL fans. I mean, I don't care that you got a video game team. Good for you. It doesn't seem to be trickling down to the NBA team or the NHL team to making their situation better.
It doesn't resonate with winning at all. And Leonsis has got too much on his plate. He's got Monumental. He's got too much going on. Yeah. He's got the arena. He's trying to book dates. He's trying to book Caps, Wizards, Georgetown pretty much in the same day. He's just got too much. He's diluting too much, and it's affecting all the products there. All right, stay tuned for the next segment. Just a reminder, folks, Sports Scene is taped right here at the studios of WPMH, and portions of this program are pre-recorded. Thank you for listening to Sports Scene on the radio and online. Back to our final segment with Scott Jackson, Greg Bick at Twitter, at Greg Bick on YouTube. Scott, once again, Jackson Sports on Twitter, correct?
That is right. Yep.
Very good. I guess it's always funny, Scott, when you all do the post-game show, especially after a loss or even a win, that your callers on the Washington Commanders games, they want to get drama sometimes even after a win. And the one thing you've always said is at least they've got the win. Let's try not to be so negative, but you always look ahead to the schedule and go from there. But regardless, it's always when you're doing live radio or live TV, which we've both done, you never know what to expect.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, our fans have been, damaged for 2 decades.
Yeah, therapy.
It's not their fault. I mean, you don't get to pick your owner or pick, the situation. So they've endured a lot. So even when things are going well, you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, so to speak.
What do you expect, Scott? What's the climate now? There was some, stuff there with the Washington team, of course. I've had a new radio announcer the last few years, the culture, we're not going to throw any names under the bus here, but is it getting better? Is it ever since that Miss Snyder's getting more involved? You got...
yeah, I mean, I think people are encouraged, that work over there about what's going on and, that stuff. And I think that's good, but, again, time will tell. It was interesting that last week with Carson Wentz that Daniel Snyder was not there, but his wife was. But I'll say this, you look at the climate of this stadium, Chase, it doesn't look like anybody's really excited to give him a great deal, right? I mean, even Virginia, that was supposed to be all in at the beginning, has dropped it down from $1 billion to maybe $350 million, and I don't even think they've signed off on it yet, so. It's definitely changed. Maryland's like, you've got the land here, go do it. On the other side will help you, but we're not going to get in a bidding war. DC's like, yeah, we got to wait and see. And of course, the land is federally owned at RFK. So I think there's still a lot of relationship building, rebuilding to be done from that franchise, and we'll see if they can do it. I don't know. I mean, as fascinated as anybody else. I mean, I got a few ideas of what they could do to help themselves, but I don't necessarily think anybody would listen to me. So,
yeah, I mean, it would be interesting. You know, you saw it even the last game when the Eagles were playing, the part of the bleachers fell down. I mean, you know, you and I are up there in a very nice, lavish area, but still, you can tell it's starting to fall apart. You can tell it's just coming unglued from the seams. There were some sewage issues earlier. It just doesn't seem like it's right, and I hope they do address that during this offseason.
Yeah, you know, and it was a bad stadium the day it was built. I mean, that was on Jack and Cook's dime, and it was on his dime. We should point that out. There was no PSLs. He's paid for it himself. He got it done. He wanted it done before he died so he could see it. So they rushed it up, and they've been paying the price ever since, including the location that was never they never did a good job developing the area outside of the stadium. There's nothing to do outside of the stadium, outside tailgating. You know, there's no restaurants. There's no walkable metro, really. People do it, but it's not really very good. If they move it to the other side of the stadium, apparently the Morgan Street Metro is a lot closer, then it's a little bit more walkable, and they're planning to, if they go there, to actually, you know, do some stuff, you know, develop it around the stadium and put some businesses there, and obviously, you know, maybe the team facilities there and everything. So we'll see. I don't know. Again, I just think if you're as big a Redskins fan as he was as a kid and grew up there, and it meant anything to you going to RFK, and legacy means anything to you, I think you go ahead and hand to DC and just ask them what exactly they need and what you got to do to make it happen, and you fund it and make it happen there. That's been my position from the jump, and will continue to be my position until they unplug the microphone on me.
Yep, Buffalo Wild Wings in Williamsburg. Go by and see Paul and the great staff. Get some great wings. Watch March Madness, of course. All the sports on TV, 7 days a week. Lunch and dinner, great specials. Download the app. Like them on Facebook. Excellent food, desserts, great atmosphere right there in historic Williamsburg. Buffalo Wild Wings right there off of Courthouse Street in Williamsburg. Go by and see Paul and his great crew today and get some good food while you watch the big game as well, whatever that game is, whether it's NHL, NBA, or, of course, golf or tennis. Also, too, network announcers. Wow, it's changed. I do a lot of work, as you know, with the networks in the NFL and all the different sports, college basketball, and boy, has it changed from year to year. But definitely this year, where it seems like the announcers are getting paid more than some of the players are. And, of course, it's a big deal now with ESPN going with Buck and Aikman.
It's crazy. I mean, this is crazy money, and you know, good for them. I mean, good for them. I guess good for the business, hopefully. I don't know. I don't know if it trickles down to my level. I'm not really sure it does.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, that's great. I mean, Aikman's going to make more money in broadcast than he ever made as a quarterback. You know, and he won 3 Super Bowls as a quarterback. But, you know, the idea that Monday Night Football, what's the missing link for the Monday night package, is the announcers has always been funny to me. You know, if you really value the announcers, don't put the Manning cast on, you know, or if you value the product, I should say. Why are you going to try to split your broadcast and if you're so worried about it? I just don't think announcers draw ratings. I just never have. I mean, the only things that draw ratings are things like, you know, the TNT pregame and postgame with Charles Barkley. That's it.
Yeah.
That's where it ends. But ESPN loves to just throw money out there. You know, they like too many people on their sets normally for their pre and postgame shows. You know, this thing, you know, now to have those two guys and spend what they did to do it, you know, it's crazy. I mean, absolutely crazy. I just don't know a whole lot of people that said to me, man, I can't wait to hear Buck and Aikman. I mean, it just doesn't happen. I mean, Romo had his moment, and then I think he's gotten to the point where people are annoyed with him because they're like, all right, stop playing the card tricks and just, you know, let Jim Nantz call the play, and then you can analyze. We don't need you to blurt out the play ahead of time, and he's trying to stay away from that now, which is good. But I just think, you know, the thing that hurts Monday Night Football is sometimes it's just the luck of the draw, right? You put a team on at the beginning of the year, and their starting quarterback gets hurt in week 2 or whatever, and then they're terrible, right? I mean, it's the luck of the draw in terms of ratings, in a sense, and there's no flex scheduling for Monday night like there is Sunday night, and the Sunday night package has always been better. And I don't think it's because, you know, Collinsworth and Al Michaels were doing the games together. I don't think anybody cared. I just think it was just because they had better games, you know? And that's really what it boils down to. But hey, if they're going to pay announcers that, good for them.
Yeah, I think they're going to do more flex scheduling. ESPN and, affiliated with ABC is going to get a Super Bowl eventually. Fox has got 2 of the next 3 Super Bowls, so it's going to be interesting. Michaels is getting older. Amazon still isn't quite there, but at least people can see if Washington's playing Philadelphia, for example, on Amazon, they can see it on TV in their home markets in Washington or Philly.
Yeah, I don't want to have that conversation with my dad on a Thursday night where he's like, why can't I watch a football game? And I got to tell him about Amazon Prime.
Sure.
And quite frankly, I don't want to have to hook my computer up to my TV to watch the game either. I really have a problem with that. I'm not a big fan of that. I think look, you're devaluing the NFL by doing that. Sure. I don't understand it. Hey, it's fine for Conference USA basketball, whatever, to be on ESPN Plus, okay, or whatever. Pick a conference, right? That's fine, or football if they don't have a TV package. That's helpful because they can't watch it on TV. But it's freaking NFL, man. It's got to be on linear TV still. There's still more people doing that. People that pay bills and pay for advertising, by the way, have real TVs and real TV packages. So I got a real issue with this whole push the stream before you're really ready for it. It's fine if it's part of it, right? If I'm out and about and I don't have my television with me, okay, cool, an extra alternative. But if I'm at home, I shouldn't have to, go to my computer and, again, if not everybody has smart TVs yet, so you don't have the app set up. So it's just, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it. I think it's silly, and it's funny that they never put out the ratings of the one time they did it for that London game between Baltimore and Jacksonville. We never even know what the numbers were on Yahoo, but I would imagine this year we're going to have to get some numbers on Amazon Prime.
There's going to be a lot more games in Europe, too. Scott, thank you so much for joining us, and give us your thoughts, too, about Old Dominion basketball. They've had the former Virginian-American coach here, Jeff Jones, for several years. Of course, he's gone to the postseason, but as you know, on social media, they want everybody gone.
Yeah, I don't think look, they've had some stuff, like everybody else with COVID. Jeff missed a good portion of the start of the season, which I'm sure didn't help. I think there's a lot of things, and obviously, the Jason Wade injury, and he was out and had the setback, didn't help them this year. They didn't have maybe the leadership they needed in that locker room in terms of players. I think like anything else, they got to roll through sleeves. They got to get back to work. Look, Woods D-League, I know, believes in Jeff, and Jeff's a very good coach. Maybe they got to do better. Get different types of players in there, different things. Obviously, Kaluzik Pay is going to transfer. It looks like, assuming he gets it. I think, he's just got to be careful because I think the Malik Curry got on a bigger stage. I don't know if it necessarily helped him. Playing in the Big 12, like West Virginia, he was on a bigger stage with the numbers. He had some issues, at times. Had some good stretches, bad stretches. So, Xavier Green was a role player at Maryland on a bad Maryland team. So, sometimes the grass isn't always greener, but maybe for Kaluz's sake it will be. We'll find out. But wherever he goes, he's going to learn how to play without fouling, on defense all the time. But I don't know. I think the Sun Belt it is a step up from Conference USA in terms, obviously, of travel. It's still more of a football move, like anything else in life, right? It's more about football always. But I do think it could help basketball. Again, the travel's not going to be as crazy. There'll be some real rivalries, some games fans can drive to, and hopefully that'll trickle down on the recruiting front as well.
Scott, all the best at Jackson Sports. Always thank you for your time, your talent, and your treasure, and continued success.
All right, buddy. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Scott Jackson right there at Jackson Sports, longtime broadcaster in the DMV who went to Old Dominion. Stay tuned for more Sports Scene after these messages.
It's now time for Greg's Highlights, presented by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com.
Highlights, GJBTV.com, HRSMHOF.com, HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com, browse, shop, visit. GJBTV.com, click the YouTube link on the homepage for archived audio and video. Question of the day to our esteemed producer and general manager, Colleen. Colleen, what are your top 3 or more choices on how you consume news and information?
Well, I'm on the internet quite a bit, so I would say probably I get some from those kind of social media sources, whatever's in my Facebook feed or whatever. But I consume a lot of radio, obviously being connected with the radio, so I get some of that through the radio programs on our stations and others. And third, I guess, every now and then I'll catch the news sources, the nightly news or something like that as well.
Yeah, I like to watch a lot of TV myself. Also radio, obviously, radio, the internet, the websites, different social media platforms on occasion, but primarily radio, TV, website, kind of a mix. I wouldn't say one's bigger than the other, but I'm still a TV radio person at heart. So there you go.
What Tees You Off? Presented by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com.
All right, what teased me off? Always a great segment right here on Sports Scene. Greg Bicouvaris along with Colleen. Glad you're with us. Colleen, always a lot of fun. Jam paper clips, always sticking together. I mean, you try to put several together or put them in a little cup, and they all like a Christmas ornament.
People like to mix them up and chain things together. I think people do that on purpose.
We've all got this problem, committing too much on an extra workload, overdoing ourselves, overextending ourselves. The workday doesn't usually go 9 to 5 anymore.
No, and I say yes to too many things.
When people make comments that are only funny to them on social media and they expect a reaction.
Yeah, they're looking for some kind of reaction and laugh, and we don't get it all the time.
And with that said, it seems like Facebook is like high school all over again, but you can at least block people if you need to.
That's true. I guess you can always, avoid them somehow, some way.
This is nothing worse than going out to eat or going to a store, getting takeout, or even a convenience store. Dirty counters at checkout stations. And sometimes you see people putting their babies or kids on the counter. And I tell them, how much dirty money's been on there or spilt food or whatever.
Well, you can't worry about things too much. I know, germs are important to avoid, but sometimes it's just inevitable too.
Exactly. Dry skin this time of the year, and of course, sinuses.
Get out the moisturizer and make sure you got your allergy medicine.
And your eye drops too.
That's true.
Remember, this is what teased me off. Radio hosts that think talking solo without guests is sustainable. Like Larry King, I think, said, or paraphrasing Larry King, the ex-great talk show host who's passed away, he never learned anything talking to himself.
I think it's hard. Some people do enjoy hearing themselves talk, but I don't know how they can sustain a whole entire program that way.
Especially in meetings or church meetings, too.
That's true.
Restaurant people that don't make it clear about specials.
Oh, yeah, you want to know what's the important special thing there, especially if it's, but sometimes they're out of it. I've noticed that too before. Yeah,
I went to an Italian restaurant recently, and the special was on the chalkboard, but the chalkboard was so hidden away from the front counter, I didn't even see it.
Yeah, we want to try what's good.
Anybody that holds up traffic for any reason, especially during rush hour.
Oh, yes. Well, traffic around here is always an issue, isn't it?
To me, it's ice cream season, especially spring, summer, and fall. But when ice cream stores and businesses sell a scoop for the same price as a half a gallon, they're not going to make it.
No, I mean, it's still part of the experience. I was saying this, we like to go to the ice cream parlor or something like that. It's a special treat, but I've noticed that recently too. You're spending so much on just one scoop of ice cream when you could get a whole half gallon for the same price.
Yeah, we used to get 2 or 3 scoops when we were kids. And of course, what's going on in Ukraine, what Putin is doing should never happen. No human being should ever touch another human being. So let's hope this gets resolved quick.
Definitely. So our prayers with all the people who are suffering.
And that's what teased me off. And welcome back to Sports Scene. Let's welcome George McClain from the Marksman. George, how are you?
I'm doing well, Greg. How are you today?
Very good, very good. Let's get right to it. A Virginia reporter among 2 people killed in downtown Norfolk in a quintuple shooting several days ago. It just shows you, George, nothing good happens at night. You got people in the wrong place at the wrong time. And even if you are protected and you have a gun, the wrong people still have them, and senseless lives were totally lost.
Well, that's exactly right. And that's where the laws, it can put 1,000 laws on the book. Matter of fact, probably 1,000 laws on the book. It's got to do with, self-defense and firearms and concealed carry and all that. And none of that makes a hill of beans of difference to a guy that has no respect for the law. I mean, laws are for the law-abiding. If guy, he doesn't worry about, filling out the correct paperwork and buying a gun at the gun shop from a legal dealer. They're out there on the street. They have stolen them. They can get their hands on it. They go out and do whatever they want to, and they can drop the gun if they want to. Nothing's going to trace back to them, serial number wise. They wear gloves, so they're not getting fingerprints on everything. So it's up to us ourselves to be in a position to protect ourselves, because the politicians sure aren't going to do it, and the laws are not going to do it. These guys are out there, and they don't care one iota about laws.
Absolutely. And, of course, this happened in the early wee hours of the morning, but still, regardless, nobody should just lose their lives because people are just having guns that are not supposed to. I mean, yes, it was late at night. Nothing good happens late at night. They were in Norfolk, of all places, at that hour, but still, regardless of where they are, what city they're in, they should be able to walk the streets being safe. Well,
that's right. That's right. We're not under martial law of any type. There's no restrictions where we can't go out of our house. This is a free country, and if you want to walk the street, at 3:00 in the morning, more power to you. But you need to have a way to protect yourself at that. Someone's probably going to try to take advantage of that situation. But I agree with you. Typically, not much good happens late at night like that. It's the bad guys that's out trying to stir up stuff.
Yeah, I mean, think about this, folks. When you're in your house at night and the lights are cut off and you bump yourself into your own dresser drawer, that happens. So imagine being out at night where you can't see properly, you can't hear properly, and of course you're already put, in a vulnerable situation, and vulnerable things happen when we let our guards down. But regardless, there has to be better laws for these people that have guns that are not supposed to.
Yep, absolutely.
Very good. George, tell us what's new at the Marksman as far as things seem like they're starting to come back to normal here, but, COVID's still out there. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, COVID is still there. The issues of, getting product in is not quite as bad as it was. That does not mean that we can have a good selection and get exactly what we want. We're still fighting that. So it's still a point of just getting in what's available to get in. Now, that does not cause us to compromise on our quality standards. I don't want the cheap stuff in there that's going to fall apart first time you shoot it. We're still with the name brand, with the Glocks, with SIGs, with Springfield, with Ruger. So it's the top of the line stuff is what we still deal with. But if you're wanting, say, a Glock 19, 19s may not be available for, next week, for 2 weeks, kind of a deal. So you may either wait or choose, something else, at that point. But eventually, it seems like we're getting all the orders filled that somewhere someone wants a specific firearm.
Like the Marksman Firearms Training Center and Indoor Range on Facebook. They're in Newport News, conveniently located to the Williamsburg, Yorktown, Pocosin, so many great areas on the peninsula. And, of course, people come from all over, from the south side and all over the state to the Marksman. Several lanes are open. And talk about sometimes the target practice, the old bullseye, George. What's the significance of, I always wanted to ask you that, the bullseye for a shooting range?
Well, I mean, it's the whole idea behind your firearms training, obviously, is operating the firearm safely and to be able to hit your intended target at the place that you intend to hit it, or as close to it as you can get there. So that's what the bullseye could be anywhere.
Sure.
But we stress, if you like, we've got some targets that have maybe 6 different, round circle bullseyes. So if you're with an instructor or even by yourself, and that's a target that you have, you're aiming not just at, a target, the whole sheet paper of the target in general, hoping that you hit one of those spaces. You're aiming at a particular spot, one of those particular bullseyes. And that shows then that you have control over your firearm and that you're able to hit what you're aiming at. And that's the name of the game.
Talking to George McClain right there from the Marksman. The one good thing is you guys have several lanes accessible, and people can, make reservations, or sometimes they can get lucky and walk in.
Yeah, we were taking walk-ins now, but if you want to, you make a reservation to where you've got time that you're going to have open, you can call ahead of time and either make the reservation or kind of see how busy the place is. Right then, we don't have a crystal ball to tell you how busy we're going to be an hour from now, kind of a deal. So you have to take the chances with that like everybody else does. But we do take walk-ins, and you have the opportunity to make an appointment if you so desire.
Absolutely. Talking to George McClain from the Marksman in Newport News. And how important are lessons, George, for the novice?
How important is it to take lessons? It's very important because unless you get very good instructions, from a certified firearms instructor today. That's not saying that you can't learn much from Grandpa if Grandpa's got the proper training, or Dad, and he wants to teach you. But if you're just going off what you see, off of TV, that's not the way to learn how to use a firearm. So, get with an instructor. So number one, you're going to learn the proper fundamentals that it takes. You're going to learn the laws based on where you happen to be and getting that instruction. So if you're in Virginia, that's Virginia laws. If you're in North Carolina, obviously you need to know what North Carolina laws are, and you need to know what your local area laws. You may have, you live in a city that has other certain restrictions, and unless you want to be, in trouble for violating, city ordinance or something, you need to know what those are. So that's where your instructor is going to be just a big help in teaching you not only how to shoot, but how to stay legal.
And, of course, you mentioned supplies getting back to pretty much normal as far as ammunition and different Glocks and so forth. But one advantage you've always had is you've always had your family working there. That's definitely helped during this time where, there's so many places, so many businesses are having trouble filling in the slots.
Well, true. Your family doesn't tend to walk out on you like some other folks could. Now, the folks that we have had working for us, they haven't walked out on us either, but I understand that there's a lot of businesses out there that's been the case. And then it's hard to get, people back in to fill the slots. We haven't had that issue. We've had, some people, because we hire, even, part-time, active duty military, that want to come in and get a part-time job. And, so we hire them and they do an excellent job, but, military being military, they get orders to go someplace else, then we lose them. And, so that has happened a couple of times during this COVID deal. And then it's our choice, our decision at that point, whether we want to replace them or not. So it's not that we have, gotten rid of any folks. It's they've had to leave for different reason, and then we choose to rehire, replace, or just continue with family members. And there's some that are not family, but they've been with us for quite a while. And so at the time that they had us basically shut down, or we're running at really reduced hours because the range was closed or restricted, we didn't need a full complement of employees. So that really kind of worked out in our favor.
The Marksman is a firearms training center, shooting sports retailer, and indoor shooting range right there at 520 Industrial Park Drive in Newport News. We're talking to George McClain, the owner. Their phone number is 872-4130, something for everyone. And you always try to learn something. There's also stuff that you can buy. There's stuff that you can buy gifts there for the firearm specialist as well. So really there's something for everyone is what you make out of it when you walk in. When you see people in your neighborhood with their pets coming on your property, I mean, nobody should trespass. We've said this several times, no trespassing, whether it's a, criminal intent, a neighbor having their dog, relieve themselves on your yard. How do you address those type of situations?
Open the door and yell at them.
Yeah, it's not right. It's not right.
Tell them, you don't appreciate that. Say, hey, I wouldn't come and use the bathroom in your front yard. Go someplace else.
Yeah.
So communication's a big thing. Yeah, and that's the first line of any deal is you don't want to obviously get in the confrontation with if it comes down to blows, but typically that's not going to happen if someone's walking their dog and they walk through your yard, and you don't have to be that confrontational. You can just simply say, hey, neighbor, I'd really appreciate it if you wouldn't do that. Keep your dog on the sidewalk or on the city property. Thank you, appreciate that, So you can be nice and be non-confrontational and get your point across. And if someone decides to take advantage of your niceness and, flips you off and say, go back inside, kind of a deal, then you pick up the telephone and you call the police, and that's what they're there for.
Yeah.
So this isn't a bank robbery, but they're still there to serve. They will still come and confront this individual if your being nice didn't work. let the cops do their job.
Thank you to our wonderful guest, George McClain. All the best and continued success. Thank you for listening to Sports Scene right here on WPMH. Also, don't forget, for more, go to gjbtv.com. Click the YouTube link for archived audio and video as well. Want to thank Colleen, our producer and general manager. Also, Leslie for the score and the music and the bumper music, too. Want to thank our great guest today, Scott Jackson, as well as George McClain. Sports Scene is an interview show, and thank you to all our great staff at Greg Bick on YouTube. I'm Greg Bicouvaris. Enjoy the spring. We'll talk to you soon.